Welcome, everyone. I'm Barbara Scafidio, the editor of Prevue, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. See how Virgin Voyages plays a role in incentive and celebratory travel. I want to welcome our speaker, Jason Malte, Senior Manager of Corporate and Incentive Group Sales at Virgin Voyages, and a great guy.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate the warm welcome.
Today's session will be recorded as usual with Prevue webinars, and you'll receive a link via email, so don't worry if you missed something. And as with all of our webinars, you'll receive CEUs from the Events Industry Council for participating, in this case, one CEU. I'll be in the chat during Jason's presentation, taking your pulse, and we can leave time for some questions at the end. We will also be giving away a $100 gift card and some Virgin Voyages swag, but you need to stay on for the entire presentation for the chance to win. I'll announce the winner at the end of the show, and our friends from Virgin Voyages will be in touch with you. So why don't we start in the chat if everybody wants to share where they're from. I always love doing that. It's fun. And Jennifer, we have a couple of polls for everyone to see where you take your pulse. So maybe you could roll that as well. And then Jason, you can take it away once I get the answers.
Okay.
Thank you. So do you plan incentive travel? Yes or no? And have you already used or are you considering using a cruise for your meetings or incentive programs? Yes or no? And I see Chicago, Kansas City. I'm up here outside of Boston. Jason's in South Florida, New Orleans, beautiful, Jersey. Okay, so we've got a large portion, 80% almost of the audience plans incentives. And it does look like it's predominantly people who have used cruises for their programs or are considering them, 63%. Great. Thank you for that. Jason, it's all yours. The floor is yours.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Barbara. And I'll go ahead and share my screen with everybody. So as Barbara mentioned, I am the senior manager of our charter meeting and incentive group sales here in North America. I'm part of a very small but mighty team. I've got an amazing specialist named Steven Torres who acts as the tip of our spear. For any of you that do reach out, and I hope it's every one of you after this webinar, he would be the person that you interact with on the front end. He's really skilled at securing all of the necessary qualifying details. And then he does a really great job of turning around and providing you with a formal proposal at the fastest of any of the cruise lines in the industry, which I'm really proud to say, within about 24 business hours. So just a little bit about Virgin Voyages. I think it always makes sense to kind of start with the why, right? Like, why do we do things? Why are we here? What's our purpose? So why should you and or the clients that you work with consider Virgin for either their meeting or incentive groups? The first one that I always call out is going to be that if you've got anyone who is looking for an exclusively adult experience, we're basically the only option in the cruise world, right? So all of our voyages, doesn't matter what ship, which we are now very proud to say a 4-ship fleet, all of our ships on all of our itineraries are going to be 18 or over. So for those that are looking to have that incentive experience that is geared to a more adult experience and offers much more elevation when it comes to things like the way we deliver our innovative restaurant concept, then I really think Virgin Voyages should be at the top of that short list of suppliers that you consider. In addition to that, we have an extremely innovative restaurant concept. So like most of our competitors, right, we are going to be considered a large ship, even though we are smaller than most. We don't have a main dining room, right? So we've got 20 eateries on board of our ship. 6 of them are what people would call a specialty dining restaurant on one of our competitors, and everything on our ship is cooked to order. So whereas some of the more larger ships and competitors are going to basically par cook your food midday and then put it on a hot plate and serve it to you at night in those main dining rooms, your clients are going to have the opportunity, and you all as an organization will have an opportunity to dine at a 5-star restaurant every night. In addition to that, we have more inclusion. So I like to think of us and maybe frame it much more of we are as close in this market sector as all-inclusive would be. We include things such as Wi-Fi, right? So that is something that I know almost every hotel would charge you for, and almost every single one of our competitors were. It would in 2024 at Virgin Voyages, we consider that a God-given right. So it's included in your ticket price. You don't have to pay anything extra for that. And for some of you that have worked with people, or excuse me, organizations like Royal or Carnival or NCL, and I mentioned those three specifically because I've worked at each of them over the last 20 years. They're going to charge you upwards of $35 to $40 sometimes per day per person to be able to access the internet. Obviously, something in the meeting and incentive world that is a necessity, and we include that. In addition to that, we're going to include things like your tips. So all of your prepaid gratuities, all of the gratuities on board are going to be included in your price. You don't ever have to worry about that. You go to the spa treatment and you get that done. They're not looking for a tip. We pay them in a way that they don't need to rely on that. All of our food is going to be included. So even those 6 specialty restaurant level dining venues, you don't pay anything extra to eat there as well. And we've got some other inclusions that I'll touch on in a slide in a second. Now, we are a brand as a whole that focuses on wellness. It's something that we do on board of our ships. It's also something that I'm proud to say that they encourage us to tap into shoreside. We're really passionate about detoxing. And at the same time, I think it makes sense to mention that we also can put you in a place to retox, right? So it's a little bit of that work hard, kind of play hard type of perspective. But you do have the ability to kind of curate your experience, right? So I have personally taken voyages with Virgin where I specifically was going for a kind of wellness and overall holistic kind of experience in that regard. And I spent 5 days really leaning into that. And had you asked me what Virgin Voyages is about, I could have really strongly pointed to you that it's a wellness option. At the same time, I have gone with a few friends where it was much more of like a bachelor party type of experience. And at that point, we were really kind of leaning into the retox. But I think the beauty of that with Virgin and with cruise as a whole, I would say, is that you do have the opportunity. I think even the other brands are starting to do a really great job of giving everybody in a group, whether they have different opinions on what they should be doing or not, options to really lean into. And last thing to kind of call out why Virgin. Our ships are yacht inspired design, right? They're not going to look or feel like what you or the end users are used to. I like to use the kind of analogy of like homes. I remember I'm 46. When I was a child, people started to really start looking for these open floor plans, right? And that's been going on over the last 20 to 30 years where people are looking for that. I think shipbuilding has kind of moved in that direction as well. But if I think back to my first cruise when I was 11 on the Carnival Tropicali, which doesn't even exist anymore, that ship was built much more in an old school type of thought, compartmentalized, which even in the home world, people are starting to look for more and more now. They're starting to kind of come back around. And because of that, we've got several kind of intimate enclaves throughout our ship that really lend themselves to a meeting kind of networking vibe, but also to an incentive vibe to help people foster those connections without it feeling like a work trip. Some quick facts about our fleet. So we are, as I mentioned, very recently, we've become a 4-ship fleet. We've taken delivery of Brilliant Lady, which is our newest ship. We have just started to open up itineraries for sale, and her first voyage will take place in September of next year. But all 4 of our lady ships are identical. They are true sisters. So if you know one, you really do know them all. The main differences are going to be things like, hey, in this venue, the carpet is gray on this ship, and in this venue, same venue on another ship, it's blue, as an example. But all of our ships are 110,000 tons. Again, crazy to be able to say that that is considered relatively small in the large cruise sector. But I would say, as an example, the largest cruise ship in the world is about 260,000 tons, to give you an idea of the scale. We've got about 1,408 cabins. We do visit over 100 ports, so we're an international brand. At max capacity, our ship could sail with 2770, and we purposely use a little bit of smoke and mirrors. We've kind of set a cap around 25 to 2600 to really help us maintain those service levels. And as I said, it's 4 ships now, and we've got about 1100 crew on each of the vessels. And I think, again, while I touched on this quickly, I cannot stress this enough. In today's world, I am sure you all know this as well, if not better than I do. We are all trying to plan more, or at least the same as we have in the past, with smaller budgets. And that puts us all into a kind of interesting space, right? Because the analogy I give people is the eggs that I buy today are like 40% more than they costed 2 days ago, right? And that applies to everything else. So I think when you've got people who are really trying to say, hey, my budgets aren't growing, but I still want the same thing, you have to get to a place where you can decide what are your wants versus what are your needs, right? And I think what we offer helps really provide an extremely high value for the dollars that are spent. So again, all of your food included. With some of our competitors, if you want to eat at an elevated restaurant, you're spending 40, 50, $60 per person per night. In addition to that, you've got your gratuities, both prepaid and on board. You've got that basic Wi-Fi, which again, our competitors can charge upwards of $40 to $50 per person per day. All of our entertainment is included. All of our fitness classes, if anybody wants to kind of, again, tie into that more fitness or wellness vibe, all of our group fitness, so yoga, spinning, high intensity interval, you pay nothing for that. You would pay for that with every other cruise line in our market. And then we also include basic beverages, but our basic beverages include sodas, whereas everybody else is going to charge you for that. So these are things that are always built into the price. You never have to ask for them. And I believe they provide planners the ability to much more accurately budget for their trips, right? Because you don't have a huge set of variables to worry about where you've got that last day or two of the cruise and you're looking at your budget and saying, pardon my French here, but I work for an adult cruise line. Shit, are we going to come in under budget or are we going over on this one? We really eliminate those variables. And I will say that philosophy of not trying to nickel and dime is unique to Virgin Voyages, and it carries over to things like venue space. We don't charge you for any of the venue spaces, and I'll show you some of the options that we've got available. We don't charge you for the basic audio video. You need a screen, you need a projector, you need a microphone. I know every hotel's going to charge you for that, and some of our cruise competitors would as well. We don't nickel and dime you, we just include that. Now, if you get to a place where you want to use our theater space, which we call the Red Room, and we've got transitional lighting and our LED boards are going, and we've got mist so that the lasers show a little bit higher, there would be a fee. And we've really standardized that because we're going to base it off of how many technicians there are. And a tech comes at a cost of $75 per tech per hour. So while that is a small variable, we can at a very high level predict what that's going to look like ballpark beforehand. So I think that's a real big benefit. I think, again, I don't want to miss just mentioning this quickly. Brilliant Lady, our newest ship. We have just announced our inaugural voyages. We call those our mermaiden voyages. Our new ship is going to be calling out of places like New York City for a time, where she'll be going to Bermuda, Canada on different voyages. She'll be leaving out of Miami to do the Caribbean, but even doing that in a different way, going to places like Colombia, Costa Rica, in the Panama Canal, as well as things out of Los Angeles, where we'll do Mexican Riviera and Seattle, which I think is really exciting for us because that gives us the opportunity to call on Alaska. So just wanted to make sure the bookings opened, like you can see here, just last week. So I thought it was really pertinent, the timing of the webinar, and I just didn't want to miss the opportunity to mention that. Now, diving into some of these restaurants, the 6 specialty dining restaurants, I wanted to just touch on those quickly. So we've got 3 options on this page. Gunbae is going to be our Korean barbecue restaurant. This is a really social kind of setting where people are going to be seated in these tables, which you can see at the bottom left there, and like that half moon shape. I also call out the fact that this is a space we can use for meetings during the day because it is not used during the day. And we have taken advantage of this in the past for people that are trying to do things like a speed dating or like a round robin where they can have a specific person sitting in the kind of center of that. And then you've got everybody coming in and out as they move around. And we've got about 40 different tables that we can cover to take advantage of in there. Our next restaurant, which is personally my favorite because I love Italian, is going to be Extra Virgin. This is our number one, our first go-to option for breakout meetings on board, and the space can accommodate somewhere between 50 to 70 really comfortably. But from a dining standpoint, as an example of our philosophy when it comes to dining, all of the pasta is made fresh every single day on board. So just give you an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. Pink Agave is a elevated Mexican restaurant. This was actually pretty recently awarded Best Restaurant at Sea by Condé Nast, so I know we're really proud of that as well. And then we've got Test Kitchen, which is kind of like our molecular gastronomy. It's a set menu. Again, one of my favorites, not one that I think people are usually gravitating towards because, again, that set menu setup, but this is a space that we can use during the day for some meetings as well. Razzle Dazzle is our signature restaurant, which is vegetarian forward. Truth be told, the original concept was a vegan restaurant. That didn't go over so well with the market. And then it became a vegetarian forward restaurant. And I will say we've also got what we call the naughty menu, where you can get the best steak on board, things like candied bacon. So there's definitely a little bit of that. Again, that dichotomy between your good angel and your bad one on one side, right? We give you a little bit of both in that menu. And then I'll finish off with the Wake, which is our steak and seafood restaurant. This is where you're going for your filet mignon. And those last two, Razzle Dazzle and the Wake, are both also going to be taken advantage of during the day to deliver our brunch meal services. So 4 out of the 6 can be used for venue space during the day, but Razzle Dazzle and the Wake are going to be used for those services during the day. So those are not options for that. So what are some of the benefits that we build into groups? The first one is going to be Sailor Loop, right? So I can attest to this over my career that 95% of the time when you give people the option of what type of amenity they would like added in, it's onboard credit, right? So we've really just defaulted it to onboard credit. Sailor Loot is a little bit of smoke and mirrors in the name. I want you all to know Sailor Loot is onboard credit just like you've experienced on any other cruise ship. It is money that you have the ability to use to purchase anything we sell once you have arrived to the ship. So you get there and you want to buy a shore excursion and it's available, you can use Sailor Loop for that. You want to buy a drink, you can use Sailor Loop for that. You forgot your Pepto Bismol and you want to go pick that up in the necessity store, you can use your Sailor Loop for that and anything else. So when you're booking a group with us, whether it be meeting, incentive, and truth be told, even for those that book in the leisure side, an affinity group is always going to receive complimentary Sailor Loop, complimentary onboard credit. And the amounts are outlined. It is based on the category that you're booked in, right? So if you're booking an inside or a sea view, then you're going to receive $50 onboard credit, which we call Sailor Loop per cabin. For the sea terraces, which is our balconies, you'd get 100, and for any of our suites, they're going to receive 200 per cabin. In addition to that, we have a very rich tour conductor credit program. We are richer than all of our competitors. So it breaks down to 1 for 10 ratio. You sell 10 cabins, you pay for 10 cabins. Now you have 11 cabins. Now, look, I think mom and dad taught all of us at a very young age there's no such thing as a free lunch, so to speak. So it is complimentary, meaning we will cover the voyage fare, but the taxes and fees are still going to be passed along. So I just want to make sure I call that out. And to give you a frame of reference, all of our competitors will give you 1 bed after you sell 8 double occupancy cabins. So 8 cabins, 1 bed. With us, 10 cabins, so 2 more than them, you get 2 beds. You would need to sell 16 cabins with everybody else to get those 2 beds, where with us it's only 10. So that's definitely something that I always make sure to call out. And I think another big differentiator is we will allow you all in our contracted meeting incentive world to take advantage of current broad consumer promotions. None of the others are going to do that. So if your client happens to see an ad on TV where they're offering an onboard credit, that's not going to apply to a contracted group with anybody else. Whereas with us, we will honor those things. So there's definitely some layering that automatically takes place based off of the way we have built our structure that really, again, leans into building that value. And look, I'm a full disclosure salesperson. I will say this, and we are not here. Our goal is not to be the most inexpensive option. We almost always are not the most inexpensive when it comes down to the bottom line dollars and cents. With that being said, we are the strongest value. You will get more than you can anywhere else in the cruise market, and particularly against land. Like cruise, I'm here to tell you that Virgin is the best. They pay me to do that. I do believe it in my heart, but I will say to that small percentage of you that have never considered doing something like this on board of a ship, I would encourage you to reconsider that. Maybe take advantage of a fam trip or an opportunity to get on board to see what the product looks like, and then have a conversation with somebody like myself at any of the other brands to help understand where you differentiate from those land options, because it will always, almost always be cheaper bottom line, and even when it isn't, a way stronger value. Um, and then you've got some add-on opportunities, right? So these are things that you can choose to add on. They will affect pricing. We don't offer drink packages. Our answer to that is what we call bar tab. Again, truth be told, a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Bar tab is an onboard credit. but it can only be used to purchase drinks that come at a cost. So what do those look like? I think the first thing everybody thinks about is going to be your adult beverages, right? So you can use bar tab for that. Let's say you want fresh squeezed orange juice. You don't want to walk up to a machine and press a button and have it come out from concentrate. You want to treat yourself that day. That comes at a cost. You can do bar tab. You don't want drip coffee today. You don't want that regular cup of Joe. You want to have a flat white or espresso macchiato. Those specialty coffees come at a cost, and you can use your bar tab to pay for that. And one of the things that I think is really great is that all of our itineraries that leave out of the US today leave from Miami. And we always call on Bimini because we have a private beach club there. Your bar tab can be used to purchase those drinks there as well. So it even works on the island. So that's a really big advantage. Sailor Loot, as I mentioned, they're always going to receive complimentary Sailor Loot based off of the category that's booked, but you have the ability to add on to that as well. Cocktail parties are things that we are definitely leaning into to help people foster those connections and relationships. We will always build in the price of one hour premium cocktail party, and that would give you access to everything behind the bar. Whether it's top shelf spirits, your Moet and Chandon champagne, all that stuff's included during the hour. And then you've got the ability to add in 4 additional kind of like heavy hors d'oeuvres, no additional cost. Is still that $45 per person for the hour. And where there are opportunities, that is something that Stephen and I are always looking at to see where we can comp that type of stuff. So just know it's something that is on our radar to try to throw in there, if for nothing else than to show a gesture of goodwill. As I mentioned, we've got the meeting spaces on board. That's an add-on, but it does not come at a cost. I want to make sure that I call that out. Meeting space, it's really about first come, first serve. There's never going to be a charge just to use the space if it's available. We do offer group dining, and just like so many other things here, we do it a little bit differently. So I want to make sure that we call out the fact that we use a staggered dining model because of the fact that we cook everything to order. We don't have the ability for 100 people to walk up to the venue and sit down at once. So we can seat 30 people at a time. So as a real world example, you've got 60 sailors in your group. We would seat 30 of them, and within about 10 to 15 minutes, we would seat the next 30. And we would just follow that model until we had seated everybody. And I will say we've got those 6 different restaurants. Once we get to a certain group size and above, we would recommend splitting them across multiple dining menus so that the timeline from when the first group sits to when the last group sits is as small as possible. And we do have a dedicated operations manager that would handle all of that stuff for you. They'll make the reservations, they handle building out the programming. So you've got somebody, I don't like to necessarily use the terminology of holding your hands because you're all pros, right? You're all experts. And truth be told, we probably learn a hell of a lot more from you all in our interactions than you get from us. But you do have somebody who is with you every step of the way. And all they do all day long is work with the people that I sign to contracts and build out the programming that we've kind of promised to each other on the front end. We do have the ability to offer group shore excursions, whether they just be private group or even private group slash custom. So I always encourage people that are considering that to take a look at our consumer website. We have a really robust list of things that we offer standard. If you see anything you like and you want to privatize it, you would let us know. We could reach out to the third party that we work with to provide that excursion to secure a custom price. And we could even update where you're going to. So as an example, let's say you're in Key West and you've got a shore excursion that's going to take you to 3 places and you love 2 out of the 3, but you want to switch one of them out, you can request to do that too, and we'll get you a custom price for that as well. And then the last thing, entertainment and shows. Again, you don't pay anything extra for that, but our ops team can definitely work with you to make sure that we're creating reservations if and when need be. And we also have a system for our groups where we give you the ability to enter the theater before anybody else does. So you kind of have the pick of the litter of where you want to sit. So I mentioned cocktail parties. I think it makes sense to just kind of talk about some of our venues here. So our number one kind of go-to option is going to be the Athletic Club. This is an open air venue at the very top, very aft of the ship. Particularly when you're sailing out of Miami, it's probably the best place to do your sail away cocktail party, right? Because we leave a little bit later than everybody else does. It's golden hour by the time we get into government cut into that channel, and your backdrop as you're kind of sailing away and starting this experience is the downtown Miami skyline as it lights up. So it's a really kind of cool vibe to kick things off. Our second option there, and it usually comes into play if and when there's rain because we don't have control of that, would be the galley outdoor aft. that venue space is directly below the athletic club. So it almost mirrors it exactly. And for those that are looking to do larger size groups, we can combine those two spaces, right? We can make that one private venue where we mark it off using stanchion and signs, and we could set up some satellite bars on the lower half because the athletic club has a huge wraparound bar. The galley does not, but we can set up some satellite bars there. And just like our techs, the bartenders come at a cost of 75 bucks per bartender per hour. So again, something that really puts you in a strong place to kind of budget and plan ahead. The dock is another venue that we can take advantage of. It is also on the aft of the ship, down on deck 7, which is kind of like one of our main kind of strips on board. This is probably my favorite venue. It's kind of like a Mediterranean vibe with beds and different type of seating setup. We can privatize half of that space on any of the days of the voyage, and your approximate max there is around 250 sailors. Now, on the smaller group size, where we're looking for a little bit more intimate experience, we've got places like the social club that we can take advantage of. This is kind of our version of a diner, of a sports bar, of an arcade. It's all kind of included in this one venue space. As an aside to that space, we have a bar tied to it called the Loose Cannon, where you can do about 40 sailors, extremely intimate space. And then we've got the Drought House, which is our kind of craft beer house that is in a more public space and venue setting, but it can accommodate about 50 sailors there. Meeting spaces, look, we are an incentive plus company, so I want to call that out, and probably a meeting light. And the reason I say that is, again, full disclosure, I don't have any dedicated meeting space on board of our ships. We are very creative at taking advantage of multi-use spaces, such as our theater space or our nightclub space, which this is a picture of the nightclub, which we call the Manor. But I'll just kind of dive into those. So our largest indoor venue that can be privatized is going to be the Red Room, and that is our theater. It can be set up in multiple different configurations, but in a traditional theater setup using stadium seating, you can fit about 435 to 450 people in there. And then the other second largest venue space is going to be the Manor. And that is a 2-level space. You can fit about 150 people on the bottom level. We have a full stage there, full screen, amazing audio video. So you can take advantage of either of those spaces, but the Manor can also add another 75 on that top deck looking down. And these spaces are really going to be suited for like your conferences, your seminars, your presentations, your general presentations, any type of demonstrations or performances that are going on. Now, for the smaller venues, these are the spaces that I mentioned earlier, our restaurant spaces. And there are two others that I had not mentioned, the first being the Den and the second being the Scene. These are the other two spaces where the best way I can describe it is we have a door that we can shut and lock things in, right? So for somebody that's trying to say, you know what, I have to set something up, maybe a trade show or things of that nature. I want to set it up once and leave it set up for the entire voyage. These are going to be the two spaces that we would consider because you have the ability to set it up once. And at the end of the day, we shut it, lock the door, and don't open it until you're ready to come back in the next day. And then Extra Virgin, as I mentioned, that's our Italian restaurant, probably our number one go-to option when we do have meetings of a certain size, about 75 or below. And these spaces are going to be better for like your breakout meetings and your smaller sessions. If you've got any one-on-ones that you're trying to do or any type of interactive settings, these are probably going to be your best bets. And then the last two are the other two restaurant venues that are not being used during the day, excuse me, which is going to be the test kitchen, as I mentioned, and then you've got Pink Agave, relatively the same capacity there. And then again, this is going to be used for like your breakout meetings and smaller venue spaces and opportunities. So look, from a presentation standpoint, that's my spiel, but I know that we wanted to kind of dive into some questions, and I hope that you all are feeling comfortable now that we've spent the last 30 minutes together. We're family, like throw it at me because I'm here to help.
Oh, they've been throwing it at you the whole time. I just start, but please
Perfect.
do continue to put your questions in the chat, and hopefully we can get to them all. Well, a big one was people are hoping you can share this information with them
Okay.
in a PowerPoint or however you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So what I'll do is I'm very fortunate that Barbara and team are going to send me a report that has everybody's
Yeah.
email. I will make sure within the next 24 hours to just send you a copy of this presentation. And on in this control panel here, I've also uploaded two PDFs that outline the meeting space and the cocktail party venue. So I encourage you all to download that, but I'm happy to share that with anybody that doesn't get it as well. So you all will be receiving an email from me within about the next 24 hours, and I'll make sure to include this. And if there's any questions that we don't get to, I'll make sure to try to answer those as well. And you all, again, my main policy in life is whenever you're in doubt, like, please reach out. Like, I don't have a gig if I don't have people like you that need my help, and I love it here. So, like, it's never a bother. We're all very fortunate. We don't have to do what we do. We get to.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
so true.
uh,
So how you did mention one instance where you could privatize half a restaurant. How do you work with incentive groups to make them feel special, smaller incentive groups? And
that's that's a really good question, Barbara. I think a lot of what we do now, and again, full disclosure, is going to feel like a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And the real reason behind that is because we're infants. Like, the way I age a cruise line is by how long they've been operating in the water. We're about 3 years old. Whereas the other competitors that I mentioned, they've all got about a 45-year head start on us when it
Mhm.
comes to process creation and improvement. I'd want to believe that if we got into a time machine and went back 43 years ago or 42, where they were 3 years old, they probably wouldn't be able to do two-thirds of the things that they are today. So with that being said, I think what we do particularly here to create these intimate experiences and things that make them feel special that they couldn't just get as being a regular sailor are things that we're going to build out custom. We're still kind of doing it as a one-off, right? Like, that is sometimes considered a negative, but in my mind, it's a huge positive, right? Because as I'm receiving requests from people, we have a very collaborative sales process where we work with any opportunities that come up to kind of identify things that they have experienced in the past to give us a frame of reference. And then I turn around, and I don't like to use the word challenge, but I vigorously invite my operations team to figure out ways that we can grow and stretch. So some of those things are going to look like, again, cocktail parties, entertainment spaces where we can bring in. We don't use a traditional cruise director. We have a happenings cast. So think about that cruise director, right? That person has to have like 10 different skills to be successful, where we've identified each of those individual skills and there's one person for it. So we've got a diva, she's your MC. We've got the spark, who is the person who's supposed to show up to each event and kind of get the party started. You've got the gamer, who is there to help people kind of lean into the different type of gaming options that we have, and not just gambling, but like board games and things of that nature. All of those people are available to us to create experiences where they're doing kind of like a custom show that only the group would be able to take advantage of. In addition to that, I think we do a really great job of just creating opportunities for our sailors to kind of network and connect with each other in ways that they haven't been able to on other ships. A, because there's kids running around everywhere, and B, because it's like a warehouse, right? And it's almost like that negative of going to a hotel, particularly in a place like Vegas, where as soon as the lights come on at the end of the meeting, everybody just scatters, right? We really, because of the size of our ship and the way that it's built, have a ton of opportunities to create that captive audience without making people feel like they're in a cage.
Yeah, which is super nice.
Yeah.
I did get a nice compliment. I'm trying to see. It was from Patty. I'm really liking the organized platform you have for incentive and or meeting groups. Virgin Voyages has done this aspect really well. So just
Oh,
wanted to make sure you saw that.
thank you,
Um,
Patty.
here's a question. Would love to hear how Virgin differentiates from Crystal and Sea Dream, for example, when considering high-end incentive programs.
So look, I wouldn't mention us in the same breath as those two, right? Because those we're not a luxury brand, right? Like, I believe the way we deliver our food is a very luxurious experience. And look, the main reason for that, aside from working with some amazing chefs, is that we've got great ingredients, right? You can make a good meal with good ingredients, but you can't make a great one. And there's only one other cruise line in the world that sources their ingredients from the same place that we do, and that's Oceania, right? And I truly believe for a ship of that size, everybody's going to say they've got the best food. They're the ones telling the truth. And I'm proud to say that we come really close because of the fact that we source from the same place. Now, with that being said, I don't offer five-star service. I offer extremely warm and award-winning service. Our crew is happy, and there are reasons for that. They're treated better than they are with some of our competitors, pretty much all of them. And the biggest example of that is these people are selling their life away for 6 to 8 months. And when they're on another ship, if they want to communicate with their family, which is usually why they're willing to make that sacrifice to send funds back to those people, they got to pay per minute to use the internet. That's just one example. For us, if we're going to give it to the crew, to the guests for free, of course we're going to give it to the crew. That in itself is going to kind of put them in a place where they're coming from a place of joy and more happiness, right? It's a very big, we're very big on being able to come as you are. Like you all cannot see this here, but I work in corporate and incentive sales. I have a full sleeve tattoo. On board, you will see people with tattoos. On any of the competitors, they have to cover that stuff. And it seems like a small thing that wouldn't make a difference, but when you can be your authentic self, that really kind of puts you in a position to turn around and deliver service that is going to make people feel well taken care of, appreciated, and it can feel very bespoke. But truth be told, those other kind of competitors that were mentioned specifically, like their ships are 500 or less, and Sea Dreams even like that. For me personally, I know that brand really well because I've sailed with them, but we are not the same animal. So I want to make sure that we call that out, that we're being put into the right competitive sector, right? Because it's not something that we're going to market as a luxury brand. We are an upscale brand that has some touches that will feel extremely luxurious, but that's not necessarily the core tenet here.
But if you look at what, we just did an entire preview, just did an entire summit on motivating and engaging our younger generations of attendees. And, number one at the top is an authentic experience. They're not necessarily looking at, I have to be with X luxury brand. They're looking at the comfort level, the excellent food, some of these other things as you pointed out. So that leads me to a question. What is your demographic? I know you don't want to pin that down, but
No, 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 no. And look, I'm happy to provide
yeah,
some data around that, but I
yeah.
love the fact that you asked me this question, and I know it's going to seem like that was a setup because it's like
No, we
perfect.
haven't talked at
No,
all.
no, but I when I get that question because it's a very common one, I
Yeah.
like to say that before I provide that stuff, we are much more of a psychographics brand
Uh-huh.
than a demographics brand
Great.
because my first overarching comment here is we are for more people than the public believes. I took my 80-year-old father and my 75-year-old mother on a voyage last year out of Barcelona. And look, I'm going to be honest with you, they're both very conservative. They are from a different generation, and I respect that. But I did bring them on board because we had some really great opportunities to do that. And I don't want to say I was worried, but I was interested to see how they would react. And after the first night, they were both like, "When do we come back?" And tied back to what you said about the service, my mom literally said, "Man, this is like white glove service." And I had to ask her, "Is it that luxurious? Like everybody's dropping the plates at the same time, French design?"
With
service
the with
or
the
yeah, or is it warm? You know what I Is it warm? Is it
Sure.
welcoming? Does it feel like? And that was where she was like, you know what, you're right, because are going to go wrong on any voyage, on any vacation. Travel's messy, but it's how you react to it, right? And the fact that somebody's coming to you with a smile on their face and a genuine willingness and desire to understand what's wrong and fix it, I think that's a pretty luxurious experience in that regard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but look, our ships again, while it's larger, it is still pretty intimate to be in this size of ship, right? Just the way that it's built. Again, I think there's some parallels, but we do it on a different scale. I will say, in the market, the Virgin brand name does carry some weight to
Right.
attract that younger kind of just clientele, but even people that we work with, right? Because a lot of us, even when we try not to, are selling from our pocket, right? It's what I like, it's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with.
Mhm.
So we're definitely something that I think more people should be recommending. And if I was going to give some demographics, I think two of the biggest ones I like to share is our average age on board our ships. And look, this fluctuates, give or take five either way. It's about 48 to 50 right now, is your average age. And at least 70% of the people that travel with us have school age children at home, which I think is something that people would not assume because it is exclusively adult. These people do go on vacations with their children. They just recognize that there's still a benefit in going on these things with by themselves. And I think from a business standpoint, whether it be a meeting or an incentive, there are definite advantages to being in that exclusively adult environment that you cannot get anywhere else. So those are
Interesting.
kind of my two biggest demographics. I mean, look, there are most of them are college educated. The average household income is somewhere between 125 to 200K. But I think those are probably the most pertinent. But again, it's much more about the person's spirit. And I use
And the
this term earlier, like
experience.
work hard, play hard. Like I've been on 7 voyages, 6 out of the 7, the hardest partying person at on every voyage was literally somebody that was 75 plus. Like I remember one guy, he was in pajamas the entire voyage. And you know what? He was at every single party and he just had like that joie de vivre, right? He had the zest for life. And that was one of the things that made me take a step back and say, you know what? This isn't about demographics. It's really
Right.
about like that spirit that they're looking for.
Yeah,
So
well, you described it really well just then. So what about as far as statistically, these are our big ships. What's your sweet spot as far as group size? And I know it can vary.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, there's two ways to answer this. The first one I'm going to say is what's my ceiling, right? Like I can quote something upwards of 500 cabins, which is about 30% of what we've got on board the ship. Anything above that, we got to start having a charter conversation. And the main reason for that cap size, about 450 to 500, in my mind, is because the largest interior venue that I have is the Red Room, where if you remember, I mentioned in that theater setup, you can do about 450, right? So that's probably going to be like your largest size there. I
Okay.
think we really shine with groups that are going to be anywhere from like 75 to 200. I think 200 is really kind of at the top where we can do more, but that's where we really have the opportunity to shine because we've got multiple venue spaces that we can dip into to take advantage of. And when we are creating things that are custom, whether it be a program or anything that we're doing to give you that feeling of exclusivity, I think that's kind of like our tipping point of like this is maybe a little bit higher lift than what we're able to accommodate at this point. And again, that's really just because I know from the outside looking in, this seems like a huge conglomerate, like big company. Um, I compare my time, and I'll use Royal as the example. I still stay really close with those people. There are like 17 me's at Royal Caribbean,
Right.
where I'm
Sure.
one. There's 36 Steven, my specialist. There's one of him. Our groups team, when you work with a groups team at any of these other places, they got 2,000 people spread across multiple call centers in the US and even some offshore stuff in the Philippines.
Yeah.
My group department is made up of 5 human beings. Okay, now we do have call centers for our other type of business, but on the contracted side, I share that with you, not to say that, I mean, we still do some amazing things, right? Like, and that's why people that wouldn't believe that the teams are that small, but to at least give you a frame of reference to know, hey, this is what you're going to be experiencing and working with, and we're going to do things differently. Like my biggest comment that I make whenever somebody asks me, like, who is the Virgin client? I think particularly in this sector of the market, it is the client that is coming to us saying, you know what, we have done this type of event for the last 10 years and it's great. There's nothing wrong with it, but we can do it in our sleep and we're bored and we want to try something different. That's where Virgin Voyages can shine because we do everything just a little bit different, whether it be the way we board our ships, the way we deliver our food, what we call our categories on board. It's always just a little bit different. So when you've got somebody who's expressing that type of sentiment, that's where we can really shine. Because on the flip side, if somebody's coming to you saying, "Hey, I want to do it the cookie cutter way, the way I've done it the last 10 times," I hate to say this, but if you send them to us more often than not, they're going to be disappointed. And that's because they didn't have the right expectation. So it's big on us to try to understand that. But if I was going to say to you, hey, what are key words that if they say this to you, the light bulb should go off that maybe Virgin is, it's the group that is looking to do things a little bit differently than they have in the past.
Have you gone, you've had corporate groups on board. Can you think of a couple of examples of things that they've said after the cruise that, really resonated with you, that this was a good fit, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. Timely again, we just got an email today, and look, I want to take a step back and just say here in life, and I think all of us are guilty of this, and I'm trying to do a better job. When things go wrong, we're all really quick to voice that concern. But when things go great, a lot of times we just move on and keep it going.
Don't even get an
Yeah,
email, right?
yeah, but we did get one today with somebody who expressed her appreciation and expressed the fact that our structure, where they had someone like myself and Stephen working hand in hand to put them in a great place to A on the front end find the value that works for them and their and the organization. But really where we pass them along to our operations team, where there's no disconnect. There's no, hey, go call this other person. It's a warm kind of transfer. We're providing them with all the details we've got on our end to put them in a position to work with you to create really kind of custom and bespoke experiences. And again, to give you that feeling of having somebody that's holding your hand every step of the way. And then I think we got a really great compliment. And they didn't say much other than, get me more pricing with a large company and I'll share them. It's Lennox, which is an extremely large
Oh,
IT company here. Yeah, they just asked me to price out their third voyage with us. They've already done one in 22. They just sailed, or excuse me, one in 23. They just sailed in 24 and they're already looking for 25. And for me, that's a pretty big compliment, right? And that is a larger group that is about 500 that we've been able to figure out ways and grow through that experience to deliver at a high level, right? Like that's the biggest compliment somebody can give me. I don't need to hear anything else. If you want to do it again, then that's probably a good sign that we did it well. So those are going to
perfect.
be probably my biggest ones. And just, I think the other one is again tied to the ethos of the brand being a kind of come as you are, really safe space. I think a lot of the organizations have come back to us and said, and if we could bottle that vibe and share it with the rest of the world, it'd be a much kinder place to live in. So I'm proud of that as well.
Great to hear. One thing we didn't touch on is, and I'm sure you probably have this in your collateral, but what bed types and sizes do most cabins include?
Also, okay, good. I'm glad you asked that question, Barb. So in every cabin that is not a suite, unless it is a solo, so we've got solo insiders and solo sea views. So those are your inside cabins and your ocean views. Those are going to have a different type. But all the others that are not a suite are going to have a queen size bed that is connected. Let me try to do it like this. And if we're going to do two people that maybe it's you and I, Barb, and we don't want to sleep in the same bed, but we're in the same room, we're going to move one so that it becomes an L, right? So you've got somebody sleeping here and you've got somebody sleeping here. So maybe our feet are facing each other or our heads, you know what I mean? And that's only in the cabins that are not suites. In our suite categories, we've got kings that do not split. It is important. So I'm really glad you asked us to call that out. If you've got two people in a suite, they need to understand that the beds cannot be split. So it's you need somebody who's kind of in a couple or in a relationship, right? But it's important to call that out. But all of the others, aside from those cabins that are designed for a single traveler, are going to use that kind of L system.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
Very specific question. We're probably going to end after this one. Is the Brilliant Lady significantly different than the other ships, or how is it?
Well, remember at the onset here, I did say that they are all true sisters. With that being
Oh,
said, yep, with that being said, because this ship is going to traverse, and I don't know if we've put out the full itinerary on this, but there is going to be a voyage that starts in Miami and ends in Los Angeles, right? So she's going to traverse the Panama Canal, which is an
nice.
amazing experience.
Wow.
To be able to fit, they had to make the balconies on that ship just a little bit less wide, and
Oh,
because of that, we're setting the lifeboats in a different place. So that honestly, aside from that, everything is still the same. All the
wow.
venue spaces inside and everything. The ship is just thin enough to get through the corridor.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. On that note, we do have a winner of the $100 gift card and the swag, Laura LeBlanc. So Laura, we will have someone from Virgin Voyages will be in touch with you right after, and we'll send your contact info. Jason, that was a pleasure. I've got a lot of comments here on what a thorough and interesting presentation it was. I mean, I really think we now understand your brand and everything that's special about it. So, you really told the story.
No, I appreciate that, Barb. And I will just say again, after I email everybody, just know the number that's in my email signature, that's my personal cell. That's where my family calls me. Like I sell one thing. You all have so much on your plate. If any of this stuff is unclear later, if you forgot, if you didn't take a note, don't hesitate. Like I said, I don't have to do this. I get to. So I want you to feel comfortable reaching back out. And I will make sure to email everybody as I promised within the next 24 hours. And Barb, Jen, Gary, and team, like, thank you all. I am extremely grateful for the opportunity that you have given my brand and to me personally. Like, I appreciate you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Same here. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Jason. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.